Welcome to Excel and Business Math video number 39. Hey, in this video, we got to see how to create an invoice in Excel using the amazing data validation drop-down list feature, the VLOOKUP function, and the IF function. Now we'll create this entire invoice from scratch, learning many cool tricks, including this feature where we're allowed to validate the product name so only the correct name goes into our invoice. We'll see these cool formulas inside our invoice. And at the end of the video, there'll be an extra bonus. We'll see these functions that will allow us to automatically increment the invoice number when we copy the sheet over. Now we want to start off by actually going and looking at the completed invoice. So I'm going to go look at 1255 answer sheet. Here's the completed invoice. And this is what we want to be able to do. We want to be able to select from a drop-down a particular product. We're going to enter the quantity 10. And when we hit Tab, we want the price to automatically appear from our price list below. We want the total to automatically calculate. And then, of course, the invoice totals at the bottom. Now, let's go over to the sheet Complete Invoice 1255. Now, I've already entered the text in and the numbers for quantity. We're going to format this, but we're also going to see all of these amazing steps for creating an invoice. Number one, let's center the word invoice at the top. So I highlight the range A1 to D1, Ctrl-1 to open up Format Cells. And on the Alignment tab, we're going to use the alternative to merge and center, horizontal, center across selection. Click OK. Now I'm going to right-click and use the mini toolbar to add dark blue fill and white font. I could also use the drop-down. I'm going to select 16 font size and bold. Now let's select company name, address, 800, and website, and the B, C, and D column. Control-1. And all we want to do is use alignment, horizontal, center across selection. Click OK. Now we want to insert the company logo and a boomerang picture. Insert ribbon tab, illustrations, pictures, because these pictures are on our computer. I have them on my desktop. I'm going to select Bell and Boomerang. I'm going to hold the Control key and select Gel Boomerang logo. Then I'm going to click Insert or simply Enter. And both pictures are inserted. Click off to the side. Click back on just the Bell and Boomerang. Drag it off to the side. We'll point to the bottom corner and click and drag to resize it. Still too big? Resize. Something like that will do. Click on the Gel Boomerang's logo. Click in the lower corner, click and drag to resize. And we can click and drag. Our next step is actually to add the same color, fill and font from up here, to a number of different areas. Now you could do this one at a time. Select the cell, right-click Mini Toolbar, Fill Color, Font Color, and then All Borders. Or let me show you a trick. I'm going to select the first two cells. Those are going to have the same fill, font, and border. Then I'm going to use the Control key to select a range not next to this range I just selected, also called non-contiguous. So I'm holding Control, and I'm going to click and drag. Now I'm letting go of Control, move my mouse down to shipping terms. Now before I select, I'm going to hold Control, click and drag. Letting go of Control, come over. Before I select subtotal, hold Control, click and drag. Now let go. Now I can simply, with all of the different ranges selected, right-click, Mini Toolbar, Fill, Font Color, and drop down for All Borders. Now I want to come up to Selling To. That's the customer. Highlight that range. Right-clicking on the Mini Toolbar, I can go to Borders, and let's try Outside Border. Now I'm going to highlight Invoice and Date Range. And my goal is to add all borders. But I want to add all borders to other sections of the invoice also. So I'm going to use my Control trick. But this time, I'm just going to hold Control the whole time. As long as you don't roll the wheel on your mouse, you can simply select the first range, hold Control. Now watch this. Click and drag. I'm still holding Control. Click and drag. Click and drag. Holding Control the whole time. Now I let go of Control. Since I want all borders, right-click. Mini toolbar. All borders. Now let's add a border around the entire invoice. Select the top 4 cells all the way down to Thank you for your business and 1 row below. Right-click, and on the mini toolbar, I'm going to go down to Thick Outside Borders. Now one last task. Select Thank you for your business and the 4 cells to the right. Control-1. We want to center across selection. Click OK. Control-B to add some bold. Now if I click off to the side, that is looking good. Now our next task is to calculate the price for each item. So when I enter quad here, I want the price to automatically show up. Well, that sounds like the perfect job for the VLOOKUP function. Now before we can do VLOOKUP here and our data validation drop-down list, we have to scroll down. And we're the company Gel Boomerang, so we issue this list price and the trade discount. We learned about this 2 videos ago. But when we're filling out the invoice to send to Kiteflight, we have to ourselves use wholesale cost. Now here's the names of the boomerangs. We're going to calculate wholesale cost using the formula we learned 2 videos ago. List price times not the 43 pennies of discount, but 1 minus the 43 pennies, which will give us 57 pennies for every $1 of list. That's how we get our wholesale cost. Now, if I were to simply say equals list price times, in parentheses, 1 minus our trade discount, close parentheses, Control-Enter, I might be tricked for a second because there's currency number formatting, but all of these wholesale costs are going to be used in lots of calculations. So of course, you immediately have to think about whether you need to round. Yes, we do need to round. But don't be tricked. Let's just apply general to see that, yes, in fact, we have lots of extraneous decimals. So I would like to round the wholesale cost properly down here in the VLOOKUP table. Then when we get up to our invoice, we're going to have integer times a properly rounded number, so we won't have to use round. All right, so you ready? We're just going to use our round like we've done, what, 50, 100 times so far in this class. There's the calculation in the number argument, comma 2, because we're rounding to the penny. Close parentheses, and copy it down. Go to the last cell and hit F2. All right. So we have the first column of our lookup table. That's the product name. The second column has our wholesale cost that we need to go and look up. Now, we're going to do 2 things here. We're going to create our VLOOKUP. But before we do that, I don't want the person using this invoice to have to type sunshine 5 ply. I want there to be a drop down so they can simply select the correct product. Not only that, but anytime you're doing VLOOKUP, we're actually going to use VLOOKUP to look up the quad. It will go down to the table, get the correct wholesale cost, and bring it back. But anytime you're doing VLOOKUP and you have the VLOOKUP table actually on your sheet, you might as well validate these cells. That will just enable us to tell each cell to only accept items from the first column of the lookup table. So you ready? This is the first time we've seen this. Select the cells. Go up to the Data Ribbon tab. Over in Data Tools, we're going to use something called Data Validation. So I'm going to click, and it opens up the Data Validation dialog box. Now, what does validation mean? It means we're going to validate the data that goes into the cell. I do not want someone to accidentally misspell quad, or even worse, type QUAD with a space. So by using data validation, we'll validate the data that the person puts into the cell. Now, for data validation, we can allow by default any value. But there's a drop down here, and you can do all sorts of different rules for validating what kind of data goes into the cell. But for us with VLOOKUP, we select list. What that means is we click in source and scroll down. And when I highlight the product names, remember that's the first column of the lookup table. From now on, we will not be able to enter anything into that cell up there unless it's in this list. And look at that. It'll provide automatically an in-cell dropdown. Now, when you do data validation, do not highlight the whole lookup table because we're not doing lookup here. All we're doing is saying those cells up there can only have one of these items. Now, when I click OK and come up here, I come down here, that is absolutely amazing because as soon as I select an item like sunset, that is guaranteed to be valid data that the VLOOKUP function will understand. Now, we're going to create formulas in these columns over here. And so for the time being, I'm going to highlight using my Control key and add our green. That means we're putting a formula here. For the final version, you probably would not want that because you're printing this out and giving it to the customer. All right, so let's try this. I'm going to click in the top cell equals VL tab. The lookup value, that's going to be whatever they select from that dropdown. For this first row, it's quad, comma. Now I need to tell VLOOKUP where the lookup table is. So I scroll down. First column has the names where VLOOKUP will try and find a match to determine which row to get the price from. The second column has the item we're going to look up. Now, I definitely need to hit the F4 key to lock that because as I copy it down, that table needs to be locked. Comma, column index number. That means which column in the lookup table has the item we want to go and get and bring back to the cell. 1, 2, so I put a 2. Now, comma. VLOOKUP can do one of two different types of lookup. Now, most of the lookups we've done are approximate match in this class, but we definitely have an exact match lookup. We're not looking up some number or commission rate or income. We're looking up the characters QUAD. So we need to select the second option. Please do exact match lookup. I'm going to double click to put that false in. Now that false is just telling VLOOKUP, please, from the two types of VLOOKUPs, I need you to do exact match lookup. Close parentheses, Control Enter, and let's copy it down. Oh no, we have NA errors. We'll fix that in just a moment because if someone hasn't entered a product here from the dropdown, I do not want that NA. But first, let's go to the last cell and hit F2. We're verifying that that lookup table is locked and the blue lookup value is a relative cell reference. Now, there's a couple ways we can deal with this NA, but let's come over here and I'm going to select another product. I'm going to select Carlota. Now, notice instantly when I selected the product, the price came up. And why is that? Well, of course, because VLOOKUP is looking there, and as soon as we put a product there, VLOOKUP can do its thing. Now, for this entire column, I want one of two things in the cell. I either want the VLOOKUP function to run, or down here, I want to show nothing. Now, anytime we have a cell that gets one of two things, we know that's the perfect job for the if function. Now, back in the video about checkbook registers, we saw a very similar formula. We either need to run the formula or show nothing. So in the top cell, I'm going to hit F2. Now, we know that we can use the if function, but I also want to notice something here, or take note. If error and if NA functions can solve this problem also. And although they're easier to create when you're creating the formula, they're not as efficient as using the if function and a logical test. Now I'm going to hit Tab. Now our logical test, well, we already saw exactly what our logical test can be. We entered the Carlota, the formula worked. The cell is empty, the formula doesn't work. So for the logical test, as we saw back in our checkbook register video, we actually have a number of different logical tests that will work. I'm going to choose, since these are text items and they'll always be text items, I'm going to use the function isText. This is the first time we've seen isText. Earlier in the class, we saw isNumber and isBlank, but no problem. When I select that relative cell reference, close parentheses, and comma, that logical test, when it sees that text is entered, it will give a true. Down here, when the cell does not contain text, it will give a false. So that means value if true, that means it found text. That's our VLOOKUP. Otherwise, comma, the value if false, how do we show nothing? Double quote, double quote. That is a zero-length text string that we saw for the first time in our checkbook register video. All right, I'm going to close parentheses, Control-Enter, and copy it down. Now, in this class, if I hit F2 right here, I've been teaching you how to use the if function, figure out a logical test, and then put one of two things. Just a moment ago, I talked about if error and if NA. Now, those functions will work here, but the problem with those functions is that you actually have to run the formula every time. And in larger workbooks, like our workbook, we're going to have many invoices and many VLOOKUPs running. It's not efficient to use if error or if NA. Because with if and a logical test, as soon as isText determines true or false, that's it. It just dumps this zero-length text string in the cell. It never has to run the VLOOKUP function. All right, so we have our formula. Now let's come and calculate line item total. Equals, I'm going to take quantity, which is an integer, times properly rounded price each, or our wholesale cost. Control-Enter. And copy it down. Uh-oh, we have another error. Value error here comes from the fact that we're multiplying an empty cell, which is really 0, and that double quote right here, which is text, and you're not allowed to multiply numbers and text. Now, even though they both look empty to us, they're not. Now, you don't really need to know that as much as how do we fix the error? Well, guess what? F2, we can use the if function again, IF tab. Again, there are many different possible logical tests that will work. Since I always have a number here or double quote, I'm going to check to see if there is a number. So for price, I'm going to say, is there a number? Close parentheses, comma. Now, logical test, number. That means value if true is the formula to calculate. Come to the end, comma. What do we want if it's false? Double quote. That will show nothing. Close parentheses, Control-Enter, and copy it down. Now let's test our invoice. Come over to the drop-down. I'm going to select a 5-ply sunshine. Look at that. That is amazing. Now I'm going to type we want 15 and enter, and there we go. Now let's come down to the subtotal. Alt equals is the keyboard for the sum function. It guessed right, and enter. Uh-oh. Shipping is a number that we type in. I don't want green there. Got to show you a great trick. Right-click Mini Toolbar. There is the option for all these colors, but don't forget about No Fill. That just removes all of the color you might have applied. Now, for that cell, I'm going to type 25 and enter. Invoice total, Alt equals is the keyboard for sum. It guessed wrong. Highlight, redirect it, and enter. Now let's add currency. I'm going to select the first range. Hold Control. Select this range here. Control-1. And under number, I'm going to select currency. With a symbol, click OK. Now I'm going to select this range here. Control-1. And let's help the invoice be less cluttered. I'm going to select symbol, none. Click OK. And now our invoice is looking good. If I delete everything like we're going to start over, That is amazing. We can select Quad, Kite Flight Bot 25. From the drop-down, I'm going to select Belen 25. Majestic Butte, they bought 12. And there you go. Our invoice is totally working. Now, we want to print this out. If I use Control P, notice that is not good. I want to isolate and just print out the invoice each time. So I'm going to click Escape. We need to go up to Page Layout. Page Setup, I'm going to click the Dialog Launcher to get to Page Setup dialog box. Now, I'm not sure how big I want it, but I'm going to start off, let's say, 125. We can come back and change that later. Portrait, we definitely want portrait because it's taller than it is wide. Margins, I'm going to select horizontal. Header and footer. I definitely want a footer because guess what? I want the sheet tab name with completed invoice and the invoice number to show up. So I'm going to come up to Custom Footer, click in the middle, and there's a bunch of amazing icons that put code in for you. And there it is, Insert Sheet Name. That's the code that will always take whatever I type into the Sheet tab and put it in the footer. Click OK. Now I come over to Sheet and Print Area. I want to only print out whatever's in A1 to D28. Click OK. Now when I Control P, that is beautiful. Escape. Now we have two more cool tricks for invoicing. The first one is I would like to copy this sheet over and change the number to 1256. Now before we do that, I want to show you a mouse trick. Now I've selected that cell. That cursor right there is the Move cursor. If I click on the edge with my Move cursor and drag and then let go, it moves it. Control Z. Now watch what happens when I hover my Move cursor right on the edge. Now I'm going to hold the Control key and click and drag. When I drag, I'm not moving it. I'm copying it. Now the trick is when I do this mouse trick is you let go of the mouse, but not the Control key. And just like that, I've copied. Control Z. I showed you in the cells here because we're going to use the same mouse trick for our sheets. Now let's just try to move this. If I click on the sheet, click and drag up, notice two things. One, there's a piece of paper. That means I'm moving the sheet. But there's also a black downward pointing arrow. That means I'm going to drop it there. So now when I let go of my click, it moves the sheet. Let's try it again. I'm moving it. Notice the piece of paper and the black arrow. Click and drop. Now let's try this again. Click and drag up. It's still got the piece of paper, but now hold the Control key. There's the plus. When you see the plus, it means I am copying. And I see my black downward pointing arrow. Remember, the trick is I'm holding both Control and the mouse. I let go of the mouse, not Control, and instantly the sheet is copied. And there's another added bonus. Anytime you have a number in parentheses, it automatically increments. And that's exactly what we want here. There's invoice number 1256. Now I would clear this to use it again, and the 25. Change the invoice number to 56, and then clear whoever the customer was. Now we can fill out our invoice, whatever the new customer is. Into the Wind is going to buy some boomerangs, and they are going to buy Majestic Butte, 10 of them. I love that. Instantly it fills out. And they wanted 5-ply sunshines, and they needed 50 of those. Now we have our invoice. We have our number, Control P. And look at that. Down in the footer, it's got the new invoice number. Now I'm going to click Escape. Now, when we copied the sheet over, the 1256 automatically incremented. But the number up here did not increment. Now, that's fine. We can just come up like we have to enter the data here and enter the correct number. but wouldn't it be nice if that also incremented? Now, I'm going to show you a super cool trick to get a formula to read the number down in the Sheet tab. This formula is not required for this class. It's not going to be on a test or anything like that. But this is a cool little trick. Now, the first thing we need to look at is this strange function called cell. Now, cell can do things like get the address where the formula is, get the column number, the color, the contents, and a bunch of other things. But what we want to look at is file name. So I'm simply going to double-click file name. Now, you have to anchor the cell formula with some reference in the spreadsheet. So I'm going to put A1. If you don't anchor it with the cell reference on this sheet, when you delete things, it gives you an error. But when you hit Enter, and I'm going to change the column width here, it gives you the entire file path. These are all of the drives and folders. In square brackets is the workbook name, there's the sheet name, and there's the number. If we could only get at that number, then we could automatically increment our number in the invoice. Well, imagine if we had a function called replace that could go from character number 1 all the way to character 129. That means I counted on my fingers every single character, including the spaces. But imagine if replace could go from 1 to 129 and replace all of that with nothing. Well, replace will do that. But the first thing is we need to always be able to find where the open parenthesis is, counting on our fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way over to whatever position it is. That's where the search function comes in. Search function, you give it some text, and I'm going to give it text is always in double quotes, open parentheses, comma, and I say, hey, search, go look for that open parentheses within that and tell me how many characters from the left it is. When I enter, sure enough, 129. Now I can use the replace function. And the replace function takes some old text, there it is, comma. You give it a starting number. We're going to start at character 1. So I simply type 1 in, comma. You tell replace how many characters from the left it should go in. I'm going to click on the cell with 129, comma. Then you say, what is the new text? And as we've seen many times in this class, double quote is the formula syntax for lots of things, including nothing. We want to tell replace to go from 1 to 129, and please replace it with nothing. When I hit Enter, oh, that's almost what we want. Now we need to use the left function and count 1, 2, 3, 4 from the left. So equals left. There's the text, comma, number of characters. I'm going to type a 4 because for our example, we're never going to have an invoice with more than 4 numbers, and that will work. When I hit Enter, there's our 1,256. Now, I actually want it to show up as a number. We know by now that the default alignment to the left means Excel thinks that's text. Like we saw last video where we took trues and falses and converted them to ones and zeros with +0, I'm going to use the same trick here. When you have a text number and you need to convert it to a number, you simply add 0. And because we're doing a math operation, Excel will know to convert it back to a number. Now I can come over here and watch this. I'm going to click in that cell, equals. There's the sheet name as a number. And when I hit Enter, 1,256. Now I come down, hold Control, click, drag up. I see my plus. I see the black downward pointing arrow. I let go of my mouse. It says 1257 there. And it says 1257 up there. Wow, that was a lot of cool tips about invoicing, including some ridiculous formula that's kind of cool. At the end, to get the automatic number, we saw how to copy sheets over and have the number increment. We saw how to do some basic subtotals. We saw how to use if, is number, and multiplication to be sure and calculate the quantity times price for our invoice. We saw how to use if, ISTEXT, and VLOOKUP to look up the right price but show nothing down below. And we saw how to use, in the Data Ribbon tab, this awesome data validation list feature. All right, if you like that video, be sure to click that thumbs up, leave a comment, and sub, because there's always lots more videos to come from excelisfun, including next video, video number 40. We're going to see the calculation necessary when someone doesn't pay the whole invoice, but just part of the invoice and expects to get a cash discount. All right, we'll see you next video.